For 6 years running, this company was voted America's most innovative company. Not by a fan club, by Fortune magazine. It was worth around $70 billion. Its stock climbed above $90 a share. 20,000 people worked there. Business schools taught it as the future of capitalism. The smartest analysts on Wall Street looked at its books and told everyone to buy. Within about a year, that stock was worth 26 cents. The company was bankrupt. Thousands of employees lost their jobs and their retirement savings in the same week. And one of the largest accounting firms on earth was destroyed alongside it. Here's the part nobody tells you. Enron didn't collapse because of one bad quarter, or a rogue trader, or a market crash. It collapsed because the profits were never real in the first place. And the most disturbing thing about how they faked them? Most of it was technically legal. This is Trail of Greed, where we follow the money behind history's biggest financial crimes. And today we begin something new. Our last series followed the con artists, Ponzi, Leeson, Madoff, Bankman-Fried, men who took money and lied about it. This one is different. This is a series about corporate empires that lied. Giant, respected, publicly traded companies that faked their own success until the whole thing came apart. And there is only one place to start, because every corporate fraud that came after was measured against this one. Let's follow the trail. Enron was born in 1985 out of the merger of two natural gas pipeline companies. Its CEO was a man named Kenneth Lay. And at the start, it was exactly as boring as that sounds. Enron owned pipelines. Gas went in one end and came out the other, and Enron charged for the privilege. It was a utility, safe, dull, and profitable in a slow, unglamorous way. Then, around 1990, Lay hired a consultant from McKinsey named Jeffrey Skilling. And Skilling had an idea that would change everything. Skilling's insight was this: why should Enron just move gas? Why not trade it? Turn natural gas, and then electricity, and then anything else, into a financial product. Enron would become the middleman for energy itself, buying, selling, and writing contracts to deliver it years into the future. So Enron stopped being a pipeline company and became something closer to an investment bank that happened to own pipes. And Wall Street loved it. A boring utility gets a boring valuation. A high-growth trading firm gets a spectacular one. The culture followed the strategy. Enron hired the brightest, most aggressive people it could find and set them loose. It ranked employees and fired the bottom performers every year. Being smart wasn't enough. You had to be seen winning. And that created the trap that would destroy them. Because when your entire stock price is built on being the smartest, fastest growing company in America, you cannot ever have a bad quarter. Not one. So what happens when the profits don't show up? Here's where I need you to stay with me for about 90 seconds, because this is the single most important thing in the entire story. And once you see it, you'll never unsee it. Normally, a company books profit when it actually earns the money. You sell something, cash comes in, you record it. Simple. Enron got permission to do something very different. It used an accounting method called mark-to-market. Here's what mark-to-market let them do. Say Enron signs a 20-year contract to deliver energy. Enron estimates how much profit that deal will make over the entire 20 years, and then books a huge chunk of that projected future profit as income today, right now, before a single dollar arrives. Read that again. They were booking predicted profits from deals that might not pay out for 2 decades as current earnings. And who decided how much those future profits would be? Enron did. It was an estimate, a guess about markets 20 years away. If Enron wanted this quarter's numbers to look better, it could simply be more optimistic about the future. That's the magic trick. The profits weren't stolen. They weren't even, strictly speaking, invented out of nothing. They were imagined and then written down as if they'd already happened. But here's the part that makes it a death spiral, and this is what most people miss. Once you've booked 20 years of future profit today, what do you book next quarter? You've already spent the future. So you need a new deal, bigger than the last, to generate a new burst of imaginary profit, and then a bigger one after that. If that feels familiar, it should. It's the same treadmill Charles Ponzi was running in 1920, just wearing an accountant's suit. You must keep going faster, forever, or the whole thing stops. Meanwhile, out in the real world, many of Enron's grand ventures were losing enormous amounts of money. A broadband business that went nowhere, a power plant in India, water utilities. Real losses, real debt. The reported profits said genius. The reality said disaster. So what do you do with billions of dollars of debt you can't show anyone? You hide it. That job fell to Enron's chief financial officer, a man named Andrew Fastow. And what Fastow built was, in its own dark way, brilliant. He created what are called special purpose entities, separate companies, partnerships with names like LJM and the Raptors. On paper, they were independent businesses, legally distinct, not part of Enron. And here's what they were for. When Enron had a failing asset, a losing investment, a mountain of debt, it would sell that asset into one of these entities. And because that entity was technically a separate company, the debt and the losses came off Enron's books. Enron's balance sheet stayed gorgeous, clean, profitable. The garbage was in the other room, and the other room didn't have Enron's name on the door. Except it wasn't really a separate company. Many of these entities were funded, backstopped, or guaranteed by Enron's own stock, and several were run, this is the astonishing part, by Fastow himself, Enron's own CFO. The man responsible for the honesty of Enron's finances was on both sides of the deal, and he did very well out of it. Fastow personally pocketed tens of millions of dollars from the partnerships he ran against his own employer. Now here's the fatal flaw in the whole design, and it's the thing that eventually killed them. Those hiding places were propped up by Enron's own share price, so the entire structure only worked as long as Enron's stock stayed high. Think about what that means. A company hiding its losses inside vehicles that only stay standing if the company looks healthy. If the stock ever fell, the hiding places would fail, and all the debt would come flooding back onto the books at exactly the moment Enron could least survive it. They built the emergency exit out of the same material as the building. Now I want to show you the part of this story that often gets left out of the accounting lectures, because it's where Enron stopped being a numbers scandal and started hurting real people. In 2000 and 2001, California went through an energy crisis, rolling blackouts, electricity prices exploding, homes and businesses going dark. It was blamed on shortages, on weather, on bad regulation. But Enron's traders had figured out how to play California's newly deregulated energy market. They ran strategies with almost comic book names, moving power around, creating the appearance of congestion, shuffling electricity out of the state and back in, schemes that helped drive prices up and that Enron profited from. And we know how they felt about it, because investigators later released recordings of the traders' own phone calls. On those tapes, Enron traders can be heard joking about the money they were taking from California, including cracks about taking it from Grandma Millie, an ordinary elderly customer, and laughing about it. That's the moment the mask comes off. This wasn't a clever accounting disagreement. Real families sat in the dark. Real businesses shut down. And in Houston, people who called themselves the smartest guys in the room were laughing about the grandmothers footing the bill. Remember that when we talk about what happened to them next. By 2001, the machine was straining. Skilling took over as CEO in February. The stock, already sliding from its $90 peak, kept drifting down. Then, in August 2001, after just about 6 months in the top job, Jeffrey Skilling abruptly resigned, citing personal reasons. Wall Street was baffled. Why would the architect of the most innovative company in America walk out the door? Almost immediately, an Enron vice president named Sharon Watkins sent Ken Lay a memo. In it, she warned, in effect, that she was terrified the company was going to implode in a wave of accounting scandals, and laid out her fears about Fastow's partnerships. She was right. She was early. And it changed nothing in time. Because by autumn, outsiders were finally digging into the footnotes of Enron's own financial statements, the parts nobody had bothered to read, and they couldn't make the numbers work. In October 2001, Enron dropped the bomb. It announced a $638 million loss for the quarter and, far worse, a $1.2 billion reduction in shareholder equity, tied to Fastow's partnerships. That was the hiding places failing, exactly as designed to fail. The stock fell. And as the stock fell, the entities propped up by the stock collapsed, forcing more debt back onto Enron's books, which pushed the stock down further, which broke more entities. The trap they'd built for their losses had become the trap that killed them. A rival, Dynegy, offered a rescue merger. Then it looked at the books and walked away. On December 2, 2001, Enron filed for bankruptcy. With more than $60 billion in assets, the largest corporate bankruptcy in United States history at that moment. Thousands of employees lost their jobs, and because their retirement savings had been loaded up with Enron stock, they watched their 401ks, their entire futures, evaporate to nearly nothing. Billions in pensions, gone. Many of them were forbidden from selling while the stock cratered. Meanwhile, at the top, executives had been selling their own shares for hundreds of millions of dollars. The wreckage didn't stop at Enron. Its auditor, Arthur Andersen, one of the 5 biggest accounting firms on the planet, had been signing off on Enron's books, while also earning enormous consulting fees from Enron. The watchdog was on the payroll. And when the investigation closed in, Andersen employees shredded Enron-related documents. The firm was convicted of obstruction of justice, lost its ability to audit public companies, and effectively ceased to exist, taking roughly 85,000 jobs down with it. The Supreme Court later overturned that conviction on technical grounds, but by then it was far too late. The firm was already dead. As for the men at the top, Andrew Fastow, the CFO who built the shell game, pleaded guilty, cooperated with prosecutors against his former bosses, and served roughly 5 years in prison. Jeffrey Skilling was convicted in 2006 on conspiracy and fraud charges and originally sentenced to more than 24 years, one of the harshest white-collar sentences ever handed down. It was later reduced on appeal, and he was released in 2019. Kenneth Lay was convicted too, but before he could be sentenced, he died of a heart attack in the summer of 2006. Because he died before his appeal could be heard, his conviction was legally vacated, wiped from the record. He never spent a day in prison, and the whole country changed the rules because of them. In 2002, Congress passed the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, forcing CEOs and CFOs to personally certify their financial statements, tightening auditor independence, and protecting whistleblowers. If you work in corporate finance today, You live inside the rules Enron's fraud created. So what's the lesson here? It's the one that keeps me up at night, and it's why this story opens our new series. Bernie Madoff had to forge his account statements. He printed lies. Enron's executives, for the most part, didn't have to. They used real accounting rules, mark-to-market, special-purpose entities, and pushed them until the picture those rules painted was a complete fantasy. Auditors signed it. Regulators allowed it. The smartest analysts on Wall Street read it and said, buy. That's the terrifying part. The fraud wasn't hidden in a locked room. It was published, audited, and celebrated. For years, everyone who was paid to looked right at it and saw a masterpiece. Ponzi lied about his business. Enron told the truth about a business that didn't exist. So here's my question, and I want a real answer. Whose fault was Enron? The executives who cooked it up? The auditors who signed it? The analysts who cheered it on? Or the rules that let all of it be legal? Drop your verdict in the comments. I read and reply to everyone in the first hour. This is episode 1 of our new series, Corporate Empires That Lied. Subscribe so you don't miss the rest. Because next time, a company that didn't need anything as elegant as mark-to-market. It just took ordinary expenses and, with a keystroke, called them something else. $11 billion of it. And it broke Enron's bankruptcy record in less than a year. That's WorldCom. Follow the money. Follow the trail.